Welcome back to the Blind Broadcaster Podcast. Sorry we've been out for a little bit, but we are back in business this week with a return guest. The first of at least a couple of return guests on the pod, but first things first. He's the voice of the UConn Huskies women's basketball team, the 11-time national champions, the broadcaster for the UConn Huskies hockey team, producer, game day host for UConn Huskies football. I'm speaking of Bob Joyce, who joins me on the program today. If you like what you hear, please rate, subscribe, and review the Blind Broadcaster Podcast on your favorite platform of choice. If you have suggestions of people you'd like to have on the pod, shoot me an email at luther.king.tsb@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter at king_tsb, and the same email address on Facebook if you'd like to send me a friend request. Or if you have suggestions, that's how you find me. And now, on with the show. With the voice of the UConn Huskies women's basketball team, Hockey Huskies game day host for football, Bob Joyce. It's the first return visit of a guest on this episode, which I believe is episode 49 of the Blind Broadcaster Podcast. Alrighty. Return guests on the pod. Well, here's number 2. Back for his second tour of interviewing. The voice of the UConn women's Husky basketball team, broadcaster for the UConn Huskies hockey squad, and umpire, if you got a chance to umpire the championship game over the weekend. Weather permitting, of course. And I'm happy to be joined again by Bob Joyce. Bobby, how have you been?
Good, Luther. How are you? Thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, question 1 would be, how interesting was it to get back into a groove when you were doing road games by way of video? And how long did it feel like it took you to adjust to get back into your radio broadcast call, even though you had to wait for the video stream?
Didn't take that long. When you're home, grown up as a kid doing play-by-play off TV, I guess it's not much different than that. Not without the detail as a kid. But, it's a couple of games just to kind of get used to it, figuring out the effects and the audio to
Big time.
To work out, where we didn't have the play-by-play announcers mixed in with the net sound. You had to get a little device to split that up. But once we figured that out, it wasn't too bad. At least you had the effects in your headsets, and it made it sound like we were there. You do miss some things, but once you get into it, and you got to treat it like any other game, you got to have the enthusiasm that the listener expects.
Sure.
And once we got to the Big East and the NCAA tournament, ESPN was a big help with us. In fact, they sent the picture and the net sound via Zoom feed, actually. So
yeah, because I noticed when you got to the Big East, you got to the conference tournament, you played that tournament up in Uncasville, you were able to do the conference tournament live in Uncasville. Yep. Then the NCAA tournament, when they were in San Antonio, Texas, you were able to get that feed. And then you were finally able to travel to San Antonio for the Final Four, where it wasn't a grand stay like you had in mind, like you normally would have. But you at least got a chance to call another game live. So,
yeah, it was different. You weren't courtside at the Alamo Dome. You were
right
up at the top of the bleachers. And I'll share a funny story with you. We weren't even 5 minutes into the game. 4 kids, about 2, maybe 3 rows in front of us, sat down. Not directly in front of us, but the mom came in.
Oh no!
And she had this just big afro of hair. And she sat directly right in front of me.
Oh, no.
That's like, you just put your hands up and go anywhere else but there. But so you're dodging and weaving. But
it's almost like trying to do a high school football game, which I've had to do at the top of the bleachers with a gate to your back.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's when you were mentioning that story. I'm like, I remember going on. It was next to the last game, but it was, matter of fact, it was the last game of the season on Halloween weekend before everything got weird.
Mhm.
I think it was like 2018 or something like that. But the teacher at the time at a college that helped me out, since I didn't have any student help, he basically had nothing to do on that particular day. So we just, we drove down, did the game. We were literally at the top of the bleachers. And by the way, it had rained. So it was not only rainy and wet, but it was coolish. It was getting cold. Because usually when you get to the last game of the year, we're talking about upper 40s, low
Yep.
40s, upper 30s.
Yep. Yep.
And you know what that's like, especially being in your neck of the woods. Because you can tell fall is coming, especially when you're at the last game of the year and you know you have nothing to play for except for the fact that, pride and a few other things.
Autumn actually we've been pretty lucky. The few football games that I've done in the last few years. In fact, I did the last UConn home football game they played. Of course, they didn't play last season because of COVID, but in 2019, I did the last football game, and it was mid to upper 40s. It wasn't too bad. It was a sunny day, so it wasn't all that bad.
Was that the football basketball
East Carolina
overlap? Was the football basketball overlap?
Yeah, the men's basketball team was done in Charleston for 3 games, and considering it was the last game of the season, last home game of the season for the football team, I told the men's crew, go do the men's game. That's a little more important at this point, as opposed to a meaningless football game. So yeah, I worked with our program director, and Adam, our regular sideline guy, was on the field. It was probably the best game of the year, arguably the most competitive game of the year for both teams.
So who was with you on the Cutler? So did you pull a Utah Jazz and Dave Locke in his first years as the lead radio voice, where he'd only have himself plus whoever was on the floor on the radio side for sideline purposes?
No, it was Ben Darnell, our program director at the radio station. He played NAIA college football, so he's got a lot of football experience, and he was really good. He prepared really well, and he had worked previously down in the Carolinas, so he was very familiar with the East Carolina program. So it was a good fit. The chemistry was good, and it was good for Adam because he didn't have to fill with fluff on the sideline. He actually had game stuff to talk about, which is great. You want to get the sideline, and the sideline guy, you want him to tell some stories and be prepared in that standpoint, Luther. But I also want to know in a close game, hey, what's going on the sideline? What are the coaches saying? If you can,
what's the energy like on the field? Can that do they feel like they can make a comeback?
Yeah, and they did. I mean, they had a chance to tie the game on the last play of the game, and the quarterback threw an interception at the goal line on the last play of the game. So he couldn't ask for much more than that. And I'm hoping that the year off, a redshirt year, we'll call it for everybody, certainly helped. They got in the weight room, and I think finally now they're all caught up. Because when UConn football has been good, they've had a lot of fifth-year seniors.
Yep.
And we're at that point right now. So we'll see what happens in August, late August, when they get back on the
football
field.
now that UConn's back as an independent,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that helps them or hurts them football wise, because being an independent, you literally don't have the fluidity of a conference schedule to deal with. You can basically play almost whoever you want within reason.
Right. I guess later in the season games are more difficult to get than early season, but they've been able to work it out. Obviously, the natural teams that you can always have on your schedule would be Army and UMass. Sure. Because of their close proximity. I mean, UConn and UMass basically have an agreement when you have an open date, let's play. And I think that's going to be the case. It's good for the region. I mean, yeah, they brought Yale back and Holy Cross back this year, which doesn't help. But
no.
But
at least you got some teams that are local, though. You're not like, we had to go all the way out to Provo, Utah, and play BYU.
No, I know. I'm aware of that. I mean, it's never going to be the same as the old Big East. We all know that. We're fully aware of that. But we'll see what this project looks like. It's just going to win some games first. In the Northeast, if you can go out and win 7 or 8 games a year, that's doing something. I don't expect this team, to ever be at the point where they're going to win 11 or 12 games in a season and get a big time bowl bid. But if they can go win at least 7 or 8 games and play in a bowl game every year, that's doing something in the right direction.
What do you think the tie-ins will be bowl game wise since they're independent? I mean,
no idea. No
because due to
ideas
the
of right
fact that we
now.
don't know what the new structure is going to be, since everything was kind of weird from last year, so we don't know who's going to be where.
Nope. But they do have a TV contract between SNY and CBS Sports Network, so that's a start. That's a good start in the right direction.
You think Bestwick's going to be back on as the full-time TV voice?
I think they're going to split the games. I think CBS Sports Network's going to do a lot. I think SNY is going to do some games too. So I mean, that's a good start. At least they're getting exposure to get a start, and obviously that helps in recruiting. And the goal is always to try to play the regional teams. They've got a renewal with Syracuse coming up. They've got one with BC coming up.
Awesome.
Rutgers would be a natural fit. I mean, Greg Schiano and Randy Edsall, that 10 years between 2000 and 2010, they had some pretty wild games between those two teams. That was that was definitely the rival for UConn in the Big East. Randy was just a different animal every time UConn and Rutgers got together. So that's the goal. Will it happen? I don't know, but they got some Power Fives on the schedule this year. I mean, you got back-to-back games this year at Clemson and at UCF in November. So,
and I think one of those UCF kids transferred to Clemson. I think, didn't he?
I think the UCF quarterback that was hurt went to Florida State. I think
something like I know he went somewhere, but he was special before he got hurt.
Yeah,
I mean, he was Mr. Everything.
Yeah, he was an outstanding quarterback. It's god awful what happened to the kid. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, it happened to Tua.
Sure.
He was able to come back, but this is totally different. You're talking about a kid that nearly lost his leg.
Yeah.
So
and of course,
the fact that he's even in giving himself a chance to compete for a job is pretty impressive.
And let's not forget with UCF, they now have Gus Malzahn, who was recently relieved of his duties at Auburn. So it's going to be interesting to see how Gus Malzahn does dropping down a level from the SEC to the American.
Well, the American actually for football is not a bad league. Well, traditionally, Memphis is usually pretty good. UCF's always good. USF's, kind of in that area, but
the Will C department.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that UCF's the biggest public university in Florida, and they don't even have to leave the state to recruit kids. That's the best part about it for down there. That's even better. UConn's got some Florida kids on their roster, but UCF has done really well for themselves down there, and we'll see how the change at the coaching spot does for them. I think Gus will do okay. I mean, you've got great talent. You just got to put it together and make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row and continue to just stay on the upswing.
How much tweaking do you think in the director's chair you're going to do this season now that you have football back, or do you just tweaking with the the broadcast and vice versa? Are you going to be able to do handling like the log and everything like that with the football magazine show coming back 90 minutes prior to each kickoff, or are you just going to keep the log the way it is since you got the full year off, or do you go back and look at that with football and say, okay, we had the year off, how much of this do we keep, how much of this do we tweak or maybe move into different positions?
In fact, it's funny you mentioned that because we're going to discuss that tomorrow. My boss and I were going to bring that up. So we might tweak a few things. What exactly we're going to do, I don't know. We're just going to do some brainstorming and go from there to see what goes where. And for home games too, we do an extra 90 minutes from the game site on our flagship station. So home games, it's usually 3 hours of stuff. So we'll start working on that. Yeah, it's for a team
3 hours for an 11 a.m. kickoff
for a noon kick. Yeah, for a noon Eastern kick. Yep.
So the network that almost is like what West Virginia does with theirs. But
no. We're doing 90 minutes on our flagship station solely, and then we do an extra 90 minutes on the network. So it's just to give us a presence at the radio station, a presence there. We do it outside from a gazebo, actually. That's been there for years. Even when TIC had the rights, it was that same spot. So yeah, it just gives us a little more exposure out there. It gives us extra inventory and talk football. We're trying to make football a big deal, but right now it's just a hard sell.
Okay, answer me this. How much is umpiring, with you being an umpire, either on the base paths or behind the plate, looking at balls and strikes, help you with the actual broadcast that you actually get a chance to call? I know we're talking about two separate sports and mediums here, but how much do you feel like when you're doing umpiring / trying to make sure a game is, controlled in a proper way, do you feel like you can take into, a basketball call or a hockey call, or even when you're filling in for Crispino or when you did with Jody Ambrosia with football?
You just appreciate what the officials do even more. It's not an easy job. Most of the time clearly at our level, we don't have replay to help us out. You try to make the best call you possibly can, the best decision you can possibly can, and put yourself in the best position to make said call. You're not going to get everything right. It's just not going to happen. But you do the best you can, and you have a little more empathy for what these officials are calling. The only thing that drives me crazy as a basketball announcer, when the officials make a questionable call, it's like if the official right in front of the play is not making a call, and you get a call from the official in the back, like the trail official who thought
all
they
the
saw
way at the
something.
time stripe. I know where you're going.
That kind of drives you a little bit crazy. But
Are you
I get what
talking
they're
about
doing.
the Elite Eight game at the end of it, where?
No, not necessarily. No, I mean, look. Was it a foul? Absolutely, it was.
Sure.
But the officials had set the precedent throughout the game that they were going to let them play.
Yep.
And that just happened to be the most scrutinized play because it was the last play of the game. But if you go back, you can see on both ends, it was physical. It was tough. Paige Beckers was grabbed, held, anything that you could possibly imagine. And half the time the fouls weren't being called. So,
Sure.
While yes, I agree, Dejanay Carrington was fouled at the end of the game, the officials didn't call it. So, they had set the bar, and they stuck to it. So it is what it is. You can't go crying about it now, and
nope. You can't,
and you go on. So
how many Final Fours with this one does that make for you? Actually getting to call a Final Four for you?
Well, the last 13. The only Final Four that I went to when I wasn't the main voice was 2004, when both the men and the women were playing in the Final Four. Now, Joe did all 4 games, both the two. Yeah, he traveled back and forth. I mean, hey,
I wondered how that worked.
But I was in New Orleans, just helping out, getting sound, being there for the interviews. We actually broadcasted live from New Orleans at a radio station there with Final Four coverage. So, and I found out 2 days before we were leaving that I was going. Because at the beginning of the month back in 2004, I asked if there was any chance of me going. I was told no. And then the day after the Elite Eight game, I was told, hey, you're going to New Orleans. What do you need to get done? What do we need to do for you? It's like, okay. So
alrighty, change my game plan.
Yeah. It was an interesting couple of days leading up to leaving, but it all worked out. And the last 13 Final Fours they've been in, I have called. I've been the full-time voice, 15 years now. But the 14 NCAA tournaments that they have played that I have been the lead voice, they went to the Elite Eight the first year, and then they've been to the Final Four ever since.
And you've only had, if my math is right, we talked about this before, you've only had technically 2 long-term partners with a couple of fill-ins.
Right, Kara and Debbie for the last 9. Yeah, and Debbie's been amazing. She is, you can't have a bad day working with Deb. She's such a positive person, and she knows the game so well. She has that point guard's perspective, and it's just a pleasure to work with Debbie.
So how long did it take? Because I know you and I talked about this the first time, how long it took you guys to actually get a flow, but would you say after the exhibition games, you guys out of Florida, did you have to get a couple of regular season games in to say, okay?
You're talking about the first year?
Yeah, like when when Kara Walters left after the Final Four at the Pepsi Center to go handle SNY.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was what, 08 after the 07
No, that was
season?
2012. 2012.
Oh, she left in 12?
Was Kara's last Final Four.
Oh, wow. Because here's the thing. I remember when you guys went to Denver and lost to Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's the last one she did.
Ah, okay. And that was
That's
with
the last one she did.
I'm trying to think who was that with the UConn bunch with Notre Dame, with Skylar Diggins and Ruth Riley, right? Yeah.
No, Ruth Riley was she graduated in 01. That was Kayla McBride.
Yeah.
That
Diggins,
was Natalie Novosel. That was Devereaux Peters.
Right.
Who's the other
was
one?
Diggins on that team, or was she later?
Yes. Yeah, she was a junior.
And now she's married now in the WNBA.
Yep. Yeah, I actually got a chance to talk to her last when the U.S. national team played UConn a year ago, January. I actually went over and said hi to her for a couple minutes, and it was the day after Kobe passed away, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
that
was a fun game to do. There were so many former UConn players on that team, and so many former rivals. So yeah, that was a fun game to do, and then it took UConn about 6 minutes to get acclimated by the style of play and the speed, and then they did all right. As far as your question back to Debbie, probably took Debbie and I about half a season to really get comfortable working with each other.
That long?
Just with the chemistry. Yeah. I mean, and Debbie needed some, it takes time. It takes time to develop a good chemistry, but yeah, since then she's been tremendous. And obviously the better the games, the more you get a chance to analyze. And when she has to do that, she's magnificent.
And there's been a few games where you've flown solo, or either you or your partner has actually had no voice at all on a couple of occasions.
Just that one. Yeah. Well, Debbie had a couple. Mine was 2013.
Was that the Puerto Rico trip?
No. Well, the men were in Puerto Rico. I did football the night before.
Oy. And
it was in the 30s, and it was outside, and I woke up the next morning without a voice. So yeah, the first half was okay. The second half was really hard, and when the game was over, my producer said, "I got the post game." It's like, go for it.
Thank you. I need all the rest I can get.
And I didn't talk for 3 days after that, because we obviously and I had was it Sunday to Friday, where I really didn't say much because we were in Florida for 3 days over Thanksgiving. So yeah, a lot of green tea with lemon and honey, and a lot of rest. And the voice wasn't 100% yet when we got to Florida, but it was better than it was.
What was I getting? Oh yes, new Vanderbilt women's basketball coach Shay Ralph, who got hired almost just over a week ago, if my math is correct.
Yeah, she was introduced Wednesday. Yeah, Tuesday she was hired. Yeah.
I saw it on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, is this her first really major coaching assignment besides being an assistant coach?
It's her first head coaching job, yes.
What do you think she will bring to Vanderbilt here on West End that folks here that don't get the chance to see the UConn women, as often, since you were here, 2 or 3 years ago when UConn made the trip down here?
Mm-hmm.
What do you see Shay Ralph bringing to the Vanderbilt program?
She'll bring intensity. She'll bring a will to win. She will bring a demand of striving to be perfect, to achieve excellence. She's an outstanding recruiter. Vanderbilt's a time-tested program that, as she said, she's not trying to resurrect. She's just trying to revive, the winning culture there. It's going to take some time, and there might be some, painful moments in the first couple of years. But if she's able to bring a hardworking, talented kid that's willing to push themselves to the limit to to see how good they can be and how much they can be pushed. I think they'll do a good job there. But in this day and age, Luther, with the kids today, I'm not sure that's an easy thing. I don't know if there's enough of them, but she knows how to recruit. She knows what she's looking for, and I think she'll do a good job there.
Okay, since you brought it up, let's get to it. Let's talk about the NCAA transfer rule. I know this is one that grinds my gears a little bit. I don't know about you, but this does for me, kind of, sort of. You get one transfer. You can automatically play immediately. And I'm thinking, so basically what you're telling me is if a kid's not happy and they're not willing to stick it out or sweat it out and, be there when the success actually happens, then what does that mean, for the school when they start having success and you go somewhere and that school doesn't have success, maybe not because of you, but you're like, okay, I'm not liking it here either. So you transfer, but then you lose that. You basically lose your next year. Do you think that maybe the one free transfer where you can actually play is a good thing or a bad thing for college hoops or for all of college sports?
It's chaos.
Agreed.
It's essentially college free agency.
Yep.
In my mind, that's what it is. Look, I mean,
that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, Destiny Slocum's a good example. I mean, she had an outstanding freshman year at Maryland.
Yep.
And then she decided, I'm going to go to Oregon State and play. And then after 2 years there, where she got her degree, she had one more year and she decided to go elsewhere and play at Arkansas. And with a decent amount of success. I mean, the last 2 games for Arkansas are forgettable. The SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament where they
got knocked out by Wright State, which I did not see coming because the way they played Connecticut, I thought they were going to at least get to the round of 32.
Well, Luther, their two biggest wins were at home to Baylor early in the season and to UConn.
Yep.
And I know some people that covered the SEC tournament over the last couple of years, and they run hot and cold. The game before UConn, Amber Ramirez, who scored 24 against UConn, did not score against Georgia. So that's, and she can hit the three.
And who was the other one that really gave UConn fits? There was another one. Was it Slocum?
It was a forward. I don't recall her name off the top of my head.
Was there was a forward somebody?
There was a forward. Chelsea Dungy obviously had the huge game.
Yeah, she did.
Had the huge game. We know she could be a scorer, but the whole thing, if you got a secondary scorer or a third scorer to help balance things out, you're going to win. And Amber Ramirez scored 24.
Yep.
And Arkansas hit a bunch of threes.
I think it's like
you kind of only lost by 3 points, but still, I mean, Arkansas shot the lights out that day. It's going to happen, and they did the same thing to Baylor.
Yep.
But they run hot and cold, and the two postseason games, they ran cold. I mean, that's what it is. And Chelsea Dungy was exhibit A of that. I mean, she's a high volume scorer where she needs a lot of shots normally to score a lot of points. Well, we saw that in the SEC tournament, and we saw that in the NCAA tournament. And she obviously scored a lot of points from the free throw line in that NCAA tournament game. But if you're not getting the support, and it's a lot like, any team, if you get one person that's doing all the scoring, you're going to have a hard time winning.
It's like a home run hitter in baseball, and you see this at baseball at the college, at the pro, at the minor league, or maybe even at your level. I don't know if you see this at your level with either high school or games that you call or umpired, where you have one good hitter and then everybody else goes hot and cold.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine you do. The Yankees are exhibit A. I mean, it's all they basically bought themselves, they purchased all their players based on power. The launch angle, the nerds of baseball have ruined baseball. Guys don't know how to put balls in a play anymore.
No, they don't.
It's either a feast or famine. Either you try to hit the ball out of the ballpark or you strike out. Nobody puts the ball in play as much anymore. There's a few guys that do that. The Red Sox have done that during their good stretch recently. And they're up 8-2 right now in the third inning as we do this on Patriots Day. But
yes,
the good teams know how to put the ball in play. They know how to execute on the bases. The little things that used to be done in baseball aren't done anymore. Guys don't know how to bunt anymore. You don't know how to play small ball anymore.
Now, check this
Because
out.
nobody wants to. Because,
Check-
hey, I make $300 million. You're asking me to bunt? It's like, well, that's part of baseball.
Check this out, though. Vandy, when they were playing Tennessee, they had, what was it? They had first and second. They got a bunt down. Yeah, they didn't score any runs, but it made the pitcher have to throw extra pitches. You may not score, but at least the one thing is when you at least put a bunt down or do the little things well, put the ball in play without striking out. Even if you hit into a double play, yeah, it may change the tenor of the inning, but at least you're making a pitcher have to throw extra pitches so they can get out quicker.
Yeah, and I don't know if pitchers know. I mean, the major leagues, you don't have a lot of guys that throw just junk, throw high 80s and then throw off speed stuff like Greg Maddux used to do. He able to spot his pitches. Guys don't know how to spot pitches anymore, and they're throwing extra pitches. I mean, look, my son only played in high school, but he just absolutely pounded the strike zone. He pitched the contact. And, if he had a good defense behind him, he had a good day on the mound, especially his senior year.
Shane Reynolds.
You need that. You don't have that anymore. You have guys that throw, close, mid to upper 90s.
Or 100 plus.
Or 100 plus, like, more than ever before. And just this god-awful, nasty breaking stuff. But there's no more, there are very few guys in the major leagues that are finesse guys.
Yeah. I mean, think of the guys that you and I used to listen to and watch, and when the Braves are doing well, Smoltzy could do it from time to time. Denny Nagel could do it. Steve Trachsel could do it. Al Leiter could, temper it down when he needed to. I mean, guys are like, oh, I could throw, 97 with gas and keep climbing the ladder. But if you can't throw 97, but you're in the middle of the plate, that 97, if it's straight as a string and you got a good hitter that knows how to hit it, you're not going to be long. I mean, I mean, think about this. I am a Cardinals fan. Okay. You're a Red Sox fan. I mean, you and I both know good baseball when we see it, or in this case, for me, listen to it. I mean, I was born in the mid 80s, but I still go back and watch some of the old school Cardinals that would put a bunt down, stretch a single to a double, steal bases, really make the pitcher go nuts.
Yeah, and they play on a carpet too, like the Cardinals and the Royals did. I mean, when the artificial turf was more relevant in baseball, but they were built for those for those buildings. I mean, the Royals.
Now everybody's playing on grass. You hardly see much turf.
It should be played on grass. I mean, let's be honest. The old artificial turf is the worst thing that they ever could have done. And
agree.
And so, I mean, that's the way it should be played. But Red Sox have never really had a ton of speed. I mean, when Ellsbury was there in mid 2000s, I think 2013 and 2007, they had more speed than they had before. Even when Mookie was there. And Jackie Bradley, they would be aggressive on the bases. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing what happens with a managerial change. As much as controversial as Alex Cora was with the whole thing in Houston. I mean, the Red Sox won with him, and then now that he's back, he's essentially brought the culture back of winning that he's had.
And
the Red Sox have made some changes and stuff, but they got a decent little ball club. I'm actually watching them more and more now, and they're fun to watch again.
I mean, the Cardinals were down 2-0 yesterday. I've listened to their game yesterday, and I'm like, the things that are concerning me with this team, I mean, they've got Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, Yadier Molina's getting some hits, but I need to see some more out of some of the other sport guys. Paul DeJong, he's coming on lately. But I need to see some more, because I mean, with O'Neill out, I need to see the guys that have speed, put the ball in play. Besides Tommy Edman, I need to see more of the guys that have the speed make the pitcher go bonkers. We don't need homers every time, but I would like to see. I mean, is this asking too much?
Having good at bats is a lost art in the major leagues.
Thank you.
there's no discipline. I mean, the Red Sox, and I'll use 2013. I'll even use 2018. The 4 championship years that they've had, one of the things that they were really good at was their patience at the plate.
Yep.
They made the pitchers work the counts. And they worked the counts to get their pitch to hit.
Again, especially against my team.
Up.
In the
and they
World
fouled
Series.
off a lot. And they fouled off a lot of pitches.
Yes.
Drive the pitch count up. And that's that's a lost art, Luther. Now in this day and age with the launch angle and all that stuff, I'm telling you, I work with Rob Dibble, and you know who Rob Dibble is.
Oh, hold on.
And he talks about it all the time.
Know who Rob Dibble is?
Well, kids don't, because he coaches baseball now. He coaches AAU teams, and they don't know he pitched in the major leagues.
The Nasty Boys in the Breads bullpen.
Yeah. And he always talks about the analytics. The analytics are good to a point, but it comes down to execution. And I just think the nerds of baseball are ruining the game.
Who was that famous football coach that always would say, focus on the fundamentals?
Pick a coach.
I don't know who that coach was, but it was like either a college coach or it was a pro coach.
Hey, I
hear
it from Randy Edsall all the time. It comes down to fundamentals and techniques. That's what it comes down to.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't have the fundamentals and techniques in the game, you're not going to be very good.
When UConn was on a nice little stretch, what were they doing well besides passing the basketball well?
You're talking about the women?
Yep.
This year?
Mm-hmm. Besides constant ball movement, second and third chance rebounds, doing basically
their defense got better as the year went on. They weren't a very good defensive team early in the season, but that was to be expected when you have most of your roster are first year players, and that includes Westbrook. I mean, it was her first year playing for UConn, so that was to be expected.
Right.
But after the Arkansas game, they were embarrassed at their defense.
Sure.
And it got better and better with every game. Kristen Williams took it upon herself to be the defensive stopper, and she did a pretty good job with it throughout the rest of the regular season. I mean, they held South Carolina under 60 points.
Yep.
Which is hard to do. Now, granted, South Carolina missed a lot of chippies in that game. But then again, they missed a lot of chippies all season long. So that was not just an aberration in that game. And it's just kind of ironic that the two they missed at the end of regulation that could have beaten Stanford.
Well, right. I mean, the last
one, and then poor Leah Boston had an open look straight on and she back rimmed it.
I mean, but that was at the season. Rim.
That was their season in a nutshell. Yeah. So, for UConn though, I mean, they got more, Kristen Williams became more of a consistent scorer with her because she became a really good defensive player. Mm-hmm. She didn't really worry about her offense a whole lot. It just kind of came. Avina Westbrook ran it hot and cold.
Yep.
The emergence of Aaliyah Edwards in the post.
To me, that was big.
Played a big role. Well, I was more excited to watch her play this season than Paige. I mean, we all know how good Paige Beckers is, and she certainly lived up to the hype. But I was really excited. Yeah, I was excited to watch Aaliyah Edwards this season. UConn hasn't had a player like her on the post in a while, and it was good to see. And I just can't wait to see her development over the next 3 years as a player. I mean, she's legit. She's going to be an All-American by the time she's done here 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
She just has that it factor along with Paige, and they're going to make quite the duo for the next couple of years.
And look at the class they got coming in this year. And you're also bringing in your Dorka
Uhas
from Ohio State. And I listened to the Chasing Perfection podcast last Tuesday, and they're like, because somebody had asked, I think it was the guy who asked, where does Uhas fit on this team? And I'm thinking to myself, hey, if she's transferring in here to play her last few years at Connecticut, they will find a place for her, especially when you've been all Big Ten twice and an All-American in the Big Ten twice. They are going to find a place for her.
Well, one thing that, the great thing about UConn, just because you come here doesn't mean you're going to play. You earn your way here.
Right.
There's nothing given to you.
Nope.
You earn all the playing time you get, and that goes right to Paige Beckers, even the best players.
Yep.
The question is, how much do you want to be pushed? How much are you willing to basically have your game broken down and built back up? Because that's what they do at UConn. They tear your game down. They find they find everything. Their attention to detail is amazing, Luther, and they build you back up. And some players decide, hey, this isn't for me, and opt out and transfer. That's fine. That's their choice.
I think one player,
but other kids embrace it. And Paige Beckers is the type of kid that's willing to embrace it. Aaliyah Edwards is the type of kid that's willing to embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the feeling that AZ Fudd is in that same boat. But it's going to be an interesting look, because UConn hasn't had this big a roster in a long, long time. But they're going to have a lot of depth. You can see it helps Stanford. I mean, they played 10 on a regular basis. Gino usually is comfortable with seven to eight in his rotation. When it gets to the big games.
Right.
I'll be interested to see what that looks like when UConn starts playing big games in the 21-22 season.
Not to get in Gino's mind for a second, but since you pretty much have a good relationship with him, his coaching staff, and everybody involved with women's basketball, with this team constructed as it is now, when you don't have a Makarat coming back, I think she was the one who transferred.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you lose her, you hardly lose much at all with what Gino and his staff have coming in, and you got Juhas coming in as a transfer.
Well, that's the hope. I mean, Anna was at the end of the rotation of the regulars.
Right.
And, I feel bad for her. I mean,
Sure.
This is a kid who came back to campus in the best shape of her life. But, 2 weeks before classes start, everyone was a mandated quarantine. So that certainly doesn't help. And it plays games with you. It plays games with your head. It plays games with your confidence. It plays, how you deal with it. And everybody handles it differently. And I just think that didn't help. And then she got hurt. She had a little back issue, and then she had the foot problem that kept her out for about a month and a half. So I feel bad for her.
Sure.
She's a great kid, and when you're also going to school halfway around the world from where you live, that certainly can't help either. That can take a toll on you, and I think ultimately it did. She's not the only one in the family. I mean, her sister transferred from Utah. I don't know if she's going back to Poland to try to play professionally like Anna is.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes, life takes a crazy bounce, and you just have to adapt. But they're not going to lose much without Anna being there. She was a piece of the puzzle, but she wasn't a big piece of the puzzle. She was a contributor.
Right.
Great passer, just an okay defender. But she was certainly, helped on offense, and she'd hit the occasional three. But with this group coming in, I mean, they're going to have, again, Luther, they're going to be young.
Yes,
we're going to talk about the seniors, but the realization is that 10 kids on this team
are going to be freshmen or
sophomores. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of one of the freshmen and sophomores, even though she didn't really play much because she got in that same foot she got hurt with twice. And I know who I'm talking about, Anika Mule. Where do you think she will fit in this puzzle next season? Good
question. She needs to be better on offense.
Right.
We know what she can do defensively. We know how good a passer she is. She's more of pass first than shoot first than Paige is. And one thing that was disturbing early in the season, if Nika would take it into traffic and drive to the hoop, a lot of her misses inside were ugly. They weren't even close. And that's something that she's got to clean up. But you know what you're going to get from a point guard, because she complements Paige really well when they're out there on the floor. But she needs to be more of an offensive.
She's been more of an offensive triple threat.
Yeah.
Drive, drive, draw, and kick triple threat. Where
not so much that. I mean, she just needs to be more. She needs to score more to take,
right.
To make if you know the really good UConn teams,
Mm-hmm.
they got production from all 5 positions on the floor. You just can't. There are times that they would lay off Nika Mule, and there were some Big East games they left her open. She made some shots, and then suddenly, things open up and you become a factor again. But she just needs to be more consistent. She can give them like 8 to 10 points a game on a regular basis. Knock down a couple of threes per game. She'll be fine.
What would you like to see more out of Olivia next year? If you were, I mean, she would get you double figure rebounds. She would flirt with a double double, flirt with a triple double. I love the way she passes out of the post, though.
Yep.
I love the way she passes out of the post. I love the way she boards it. But I'd love to see her see if she can, get more consistent and get a triple double, get me a 10-10-10, because that would really open more of the outside up.
She's got to get tougher around the rim.
Yep.
She's got to finish more around the rim. Look. She did some really good things in the Baylor win.
Yep.
Defensively and assists, and she had 5 blocks in the Baylor game.
Right.
They had a season high. I mean, think about this. The team had a season high in blocks against Baylor. Baylor.
And look,
still mind-boggling.
And that's something you don't see with a Kim Mulkey team because they are long.
Right.
Kim Mulkey bunch is long and lanky and just like gazelles on the floor.
Yeah. The thing about Liv, she just needs to get tougher. Yeah. I remember freshman year, they're trying to work her on a hook shot. She's 6'5". She's got long arms. Learn that hook shot. Watch Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh yeah.
Go back and watch. The dude lived on the sky hook. I mean, that was a devastating shot. Well, she won't take that. She'll take that fall away jumper in the lane.
Why?
Where she doesn't have to. She just can go straight up with it. But you watch that Arizona game. I mean, she was 0 for 7. She missed a couple of fallaways, but around the rim, those shots weren't even close. She's got to be able to finish better. Otherwise, she's going to get lost in the shuffle here.
That's what I was wondering because it concerned me. I'm sitting there, I listened to the game when UConn was making their run. I'm like, okay, they're back within 5. And then I'm like, you're like, Liv follow it. I'm like, why? I'm like, you are 6'5". The tallest player Arizona has is like what, 6'2", 6'3"?
Because Luther, when things get tough, you tend to revert back to what you're comfortable doing, no matter who you are, unless you're willing to improve and say, I've got to do this better. Well, I think she took a big step back. The last 3 games of the NCAA tournament, Liv wasn't much of a factor from a scoring standpoint, and she has to be. Now, granted, she's she plays in the high post. She can hit that 15-footer, but really, she really doesn't want a whole lot to do with the post. Getting physical on offense inside. I just don't think she's built that way. She's wired that way. And I'm going to be interested to see how
she develops this offseason.
and how she does what she does in the off season to try to change that, because obviously she's a good post player.
Yep.
In the Big East, but when you play the South Carolinas, when you play the Baylors, when you play the Oregons, when you play the non-conference schedule that UConn plays every year, when you play in a normal season, you're going to be measured by that. You're going to be measured by what you do in the NCAA tournament. I hope Olivia puts that stat line in her locker room from that Arizona game and uses that motivation the way that Tina Charles used it her freshman year, when Sylvia Fowles just dominated her in the Elite 8 in Fresno back in 2007.
Yep.
And we know what Tina Charles turned into.
Yep.
Can Olivia be that same player? I don't know. But this is a big year for her for so many reasons coming up. Because right now, she's not a WNBA type player in my mind. She won't succeed in that league. If she has the same kind of year next season as she had this season, she'll be drafted.
I don't even think she'll be on any draft boards.
She might be.
Second round, maybe third.
Yeah, probably. But that doesn't guarantee you anything unless there's expansion. Because right now there's only 12 teams in WNBA.
Yeah, I think it's 12. Because I read something. Open. What was it? I read something on Friday about like expansion teams. With the league being in a good place. what cities could use, expansion in the NBA, in the WNBA, my bad. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, if there were, 6 extra teams, you could get it to 18. And a player like, I don't know, Olivia or some other players that make and take that next step forward, if there are extra teams where they can get more opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it's a possibility, but again, I don't know how much John Maxwell or John Gordon you listen to or read, but they always talk about changing and adapting. Either you have one or two options here. You either adapt because you want to, or you're being forced to adapt, and life's going to force you to adapt whether you want to or not. And I think, as you talked about,
I still want to.
I think when you talk about with Olivia, like with you and I just sitting here, just shooting the breeze like we always do on these podcasts, we look at players and talk about players like, okay, what are they doing? Are they adapting because they want to adapt, or is their game being forced to adapt and change with stronger athletes? Ladies that can take their game, that already have their patented game and so on and so forth. How do the players that are already in women's college basketball or in any sport adapt with these other people that are coming out of high school with their game already matured?
Well, their game's matured to a point when they get to college, especially when you come to UConn. I mean, Gino, really impressed with what Paige has done as far as her preparation goes, but the sky's the limit for Paige. There's so much that she has to learn still. As good a year as she had as a freshman, there's just so much more that she has to learn to be the elite of the elite.
Like the Katie Lou's and the Thesias and the Katie Lou's and and
the Stewies.
Speaking of her, another championship and another MVP again. Like, is there anything this young lady has not done yet? Is there anything?
And she's only
Stewie
26.
Has not done yet.
And she's only 26. I mean, she's doing what Maya Moore. She's doing what Maya Moore did. When Maya came out of UConn, the exact same thing.
I'm sitting here looking at my Twitter, and she's like, another MVP, check. Another championship, check. And I'm thinking to myself,
now look. The team that she played on is really good. I mean, when you have Brittany Griner, Courtney Vandersloot, Allie Quigley, and then, a good group of Europeans. I mean, I was rooting really hard for Katie Lou and her sister and Tiffany Hayes to win a championship. But it's like any team that's got Stewie, you don't bet against.
No,
championship game.
It's like Tom Brady. You don't bet against
Brady. Exactly. or any team that has Diana Taurasi, or any team that has Maya Moore, or any team that has Sue Bird. You just usually don't. You don't. And you know what? I'm really happy for Lou. It sounds like she had a really, really good year playing for the team in Spain with her sister. I just hope that Seattle is a great fit for her, playing with Sue and playing with Stewie, Jewel Lloyd. I mean, they're loaded there.
Oh,
I
you know what?
Lou uses the momentum of the season in Europe and has a great year in the WNBA because she's due.
Bob, I think it will be, because due to the fact that she's got a legend in Sue Bird who played at UConn. You got a teammate she just got done playing with not too long ago. They graduated at the same time, in Brianna Stewart, who's Little Miss Everything. You got Sue Bird, who is the queen of assists. I mean, she should fit in just fine with all those players that we've talked about.
Well, you'd like to think so.
Yeah, you hope.
You hope. It comes down to confidence. It comes down to the trust that the coach has in you, and if she can earn that trust and with her teammates, I think she'll be fine. But I think this is a really big year for Katie Lou as far as the WNBA is concerned.
Who are you really looking forward to seeing when UConn women's basketball tips off their exhibition season, to see how they fit? Like, which players are you looking at that are coming in, that are going to be starting practicing, and Which besides the usual suspects, which of the newbies are you really looking forward to seeing play?
Well, I mean, all of them. I mean, I just want to see how they fit in the grand scheme of things. I mean, there's going to be a lot of competition with the size of the roster that they have. There's going to be a lot of competition for playing time, and it's going to be that's going to determine how deep Gino goes. You know, how ready are these kids? And hopefully, there's normalcy this year. They come back in June, start getting a taste of what it's about. Then they go home and work out, and then they get back together in August, and off they go. You know, to spend the full season and get ready for the season. You know, you've already seen videos of AZ and Paige working out together. That's big. I mean, I think that's the next big thing for Paige's development. She's got to get stronger.
Yep.
But we all knew that going in. I mean, she's not the most solid kid. I mean, she's kind of built like Stewie when Stewie came to UConn, except she's 5 inches shorter.
Yeah, a little lighter.
Yeah, and a little lighter too. So she's got to get tougher. She works hard. She moves well without the basketball. She's really good with that. But I'm just going to be interested to see what the competition is going to be like. Yeah, you go by numbers and they have a lot of depth in theory, but do they truly have a lot of depth? That's going to be the biggest thing, I think, in my mind, to see how these freshmen, Fudd's going to be a big factor, but how the other three do, that's to be determined. I'll be interested to see how that works out.
The player you mentioned, Fudd, what does because I've heard her name, but I don't, know much. I mean,
she was the National High School Player of the Year as a sophomore.
Okay,
better than Paige. She's an outstanding shooter. I mean, we're talking Katie Lou, Kalina Mosqueda-Lewis.
Parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, she's an outstanding shooter. We're talking Katie Lou, Kalina Mosqueda-Lewis, Diana Taurasi type shooter.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh
my. The perimeter. And that's something they need. From a team standpoint, Luther, there's one area that UConn's got to get better at.
Shooting.
They were not good at this year, and that was free throw shooting.
Oh, tell me about it.
Traditionally, they're high 70s, around 80%. They were right around 70 all year. And if you listen to our games, the free throw numbers against ranked teams is staggering. It's not even 55%.
Didn't you tell me it was like
staggering? Now, granted, in a lot of those big games, right, Liv and Aaliyah got more free throw opportunities because of the physicality of the game. So that's a part of it. And to a point, even Kristen had some woes this season. That's an area that's got to get better if they're thinking this is going to be, if they're going to win a national championship or two during this stretch here. They're going to compete for the opportunity. They're going to always be in that position to win, but you need some breaks and you need to execute, and free throw shooting was a big factor this year, I thought. I mean, look, when Kristen Williams missed those 2 free throws at the end of the Baylor game, Deb and I looked at each other and thinking, oh, here we go again. No. We're going to have another heartbreak again. Now, fortunately, it didn't work out that way, but yeah, that's an area that was a big, just un-UConn like this season was their free throw shooting, and that's got to get better.
Take me behind the curtain a little bit, like commercial break wise. What are when you're looking at the stat sheet or when you're getting that nice little 2-minute break before you, Deb, come back on the air?
Are you talking in game?
Yeah, what are you either you individually or both of you kind of eyeing at the same time?
Well,
after that 3 or 4 minute stretch,
when we get to the break, when you hear the highlights at the end of the game, it's basically I'm writing the game story as we go along. So during the breaks, I'm immediately going to the scoring section of the stat monitor to talk to my producer of what highlights we're going to take or what highlight we're going to take, and I have to form a script around that. So I'm usually in the middle of writing my script down that entire break of what we're doing here. I'm trying to figure out what the runs are, figure out how well they've shot the ball. Hey, they've made their last 5 shots, that sort of thing. I always tell Debbie, if there's something you want me to tee up on, please let me know. We do that once in a while too. But usually in game, I'm usually writing my script for the post game. So that happens usually during every break.
Can you believe this season? Can you believe this season's going to be an even decade?
What do you mean?
10 years of with your same broadcast
Oh,
partner?
Debbie?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Debbie's not an athletic director anymore. This year she didn't work. She gave it up because of just it's 7 days a week, and she had basically just had enough of it between parents and coaches and all that. It's being an athletic director is not an easy job, and especially when you're going from coaches from fifth grade to 12th grade. That's not the easiest thing to do at a private school. So I don't know what's next for Debbie. I know her husband wants her to get back into the workforce doing something. I don't know what it's going to be, but the invitation's always open to Debbie to come back each and every year, and we'll see what happens. But it certainly would not be the same without her. But the invitation's always open. She's a good friend, outstanding person, good family wife, great husband, 3 great kids. So yeah, the invite's always open for her to come back.
If the day that you decides not to come back, is there like a short list of folks you'd like to have?
Not even thinking about it. Not even thinking about it.
You're like me. You want consistency, and that's all you ask for. Either in a broadcast.
A lot depends on availability too.
Yeah.
Morgan Tuck has filled in for Debbie on occasion. Not the last couple of years, but Debbie Morgan would be a great choice. She was a natural at doing the games. I thought she was outstanding.
I'll put it this way: when she stepped in for Deb on a couple of occasions, I'm like, okay, if Bob needed a new color handler, she just took to it like a fish out of water. Easy.
Yeah, and a lot depends on are you local? Yeah, you'd love to get a former player to do the games who knows the game, but are they available? B, will they work for the rate that we offer? There's so much stuff that you have to. Yeah, logistics you have to get involved with. So we'll see. Hopefully, it's something I don't have to worry about for a couple of years, but you never know. And it's just been fun.
Are you going to keep the coaches corner open for next year, or do you think if everything gets back to normal, it's going to go back to exclusive Gino on the pregame chats?
Look, the coaches did a great job this year. Gino basically just got burned out with the Zoom and the phone stuff, and we were the victim of that this year. Yep. Gino likes to be personable. He likes to be one-on-one. He likes to be face-to-face. So things are back to normal. Yeah, I would certainly say Gino's back next season, but who knows? Who knows if we're even going to be traveling all the time next season long. One thing that if this season has discovered, companies can do games remotely without paying all the travel costs that it takes to go for people to get to games and save money for talent. We saw ESPN do that, and I guess I'm hearing that's gonna become a regular thing for them. So is it going to be a regular thing for us? God, I hope not, because you lose an element of the broadcast that way. But,
exactly.
I'm not the one making the decisions. So, again, I'm not convinced when the football season starts in late August that Mike, Wayne, and Chris and Adam are going to be in Fresno, California. My gut tells me they're going to be in the studio calling the game. That's just my gut right now. So there's so many things still up in the air about what we're going to see for UConn athletics starting next year, but the folks in Winston-Salem have that call. That's not a local call. That's not a UConn call. That's a Winston-Salem call. So we'll see.
I hope that a lot of the broadcast teams that did not get a chance to travel last year will get the chance to travel, because I miss a lot of the effects of hearing the basketball shots going up, and if I can hear with my ears if it's a make or a miss, even though sometimes when they make it, it's especially if their shots are just straight pure, you don't even hear the switch from the net. But you just have that element of, okay, this is what a basketball game is supposed to sound like.
Yeah, sometimes this year's we just had canned Crown Boys. It's not the same. You're right. Fortunately, we were able to figure it out with some of the broadcast partners, where they would put the announcers on 2 channels, and then they would put the Nat sound on 2 separate channels where we could break it up and just use that. At least you have that in your headsets, and you get a sense that you're at the game. But again, Luther, with the fact that companies had so much success broadcasting remotely this year in a pandemic year, I think it ultimately comes down to dollars and cents. Whether it makes sense, I would say no. But
I just hope we don't
I'm
get
not
to.
the
I
one
hope we
that's
don't get to that point.
counting the pennies. So
I hope we don't get to that point, because if it does, kind of like what they're doing with minor league baseball this year, no more championship series. The winners of each division, that's that. No more like deciding a best 3 out of 5. Or I'm like, wow. I understand we had a COVID year, but with everybody and these leagues being shuffled around and everything else, Nationals in a whole new league, but their travel's a lot closer. Thank God for that. Whether to travel a little out to Fresno, California, or Sacramento. I mean, I miss those broadcast guys. I mean, I've met a few of them. I'm going to miss the fact that the Sounds will not play those teams anymore. But in a roundabout way, I'm kind of glad the Sounds are, playing teams that they should have been playing all these years ago. Like Toledo to open the season in 2 weeks. We haven't seen Toledo. We Indianapolis, a Charlotte, a Jacksonville. We keep Memphis. We keep Omaha. We keep Iowa. But you lose those good ones like in Salt Lake City. You don't go to Round Rock, Texas anymore for the foreseeable future. You'll get St. Paul, but you won't see them for another year or two.
Yep. Well, it's going to be interesting. Hey, I got to wrap things up here.
Yep.
From my standpoint, I got to run, but
sounds good.
Thanks for having me on again.
No problem. Hopefully, when we get back, if I get you for a third time, hopefully, we'll actually be in somewhat normalcy, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about the Avengers from the road.
Yep, indeed. Thanks for the time.
You got it, pal.